The sky broke open with a roar, hurling sheets of freezing rain across the cracked surface of the wasteland. Wind screamed like a living thing, ripping up dust and debris in every direction. Hunter ran through the storm, one hand over his eyes, and the other gripping the broken strap of his supply pack. He didn't know how long he'd been sprinting, only that his lungs burned and his boots felt like stone. He stumbled over twisted roots and ancient bones, the ground giving way to sinkholes hidden beneath the stormwater. The terrain was wrong. Here, too soft, too strange, like something that hadn't been disturbed in years. His radio crackled behind him with static. No voices responded. No team, no outpost. No rescue. The cliffs rose from the earth like teeth, sharp and crooked. Between two rocks, he saw a jagged opening, a cave. Shelter. Without thinking, he ducked inside, barely slipping through the narrow mouth. The wind howled outside, but inside was silence. Cold, thick silence that pressed against his ears like wool. Hunter blinked in the dim light, letting his eyes adjust. The cave stretched deeper than he expected. Jagged rock and smooth black walls lined with strange glistening moss. The air felt heavy, old, not stale, but alive, like something breathing slowly in the dark. He lit his small lamp and stepped further in. Every crunch of gravel underfoot echoed too long. The deeper he went, the more unnatural it felt. He should have stopped. He should have stayed near the entrance. But the wind outside screamed louder now, and his legs moved on their own. A few more meters in, he found a dry patch of stone behind a natural column. He set down his pack and collapsed with a groan. His clothes were soaked through, his fingers numb. But at least he was out of the storm. He took off one boot and rubbed at his ankle, not noticing the soft sound behind him. Something was moving, slowly, carefully, from deep within the black, not scurrying like a rat. Not the flutter of wings, something large, something dragging, something that knew how to be quiet. Hunter froze. He held his breath and turned off his lamp. Darkness wrapped around him like a shroud. He could hear the wind at the cave mouth, but something else moved closer. A scraping sound, almost like a whisper on stone. He drew his knife, though it felt useless in his hand. Then came the voice, low, dry, ancient, from just beyond the shadows. It did not yell. It did not snarl. It simply spoke, with words that chilled the marrow in his bones. You're the first warm one to enter in 5 centuries. The first meal in 500 years. Hunter didn't move. His breath caught in his throat like a stone. The voice had not echoed. It had been too close, too calm, and far too aware. He wanted to speak but found his lips dry. The words refused to rise. In the black, the knife in his hand felt like paper. Something ancient shared the darkness with him. Something that could talk. The silence stretched. Then came a slow shifting, like dry skin brushing rock. The sound circled him. Not from one place, but from many directions. The thing was moving. Around him, unseen but certain. Hunter took a shaky breath and forced himself to speak. His voice cracked. I didn't mean to trespass. I just needed shelter. The words sounded small in the cave. Smaller than they should have. The voice chuckled. It was not a laugh. It had no joy. It was hunger, folded in amusement. Shelter, yes, that is what the last one said. Before the bones, before the begging, before the end. He stood slowly, careful not to slip. His lamp remained off. He didn't dare reveal himself yet. The cold in the cave was no longer natural. It bit at his skin like breath from something dead. What are you? He asked, barely above a whisper. The voice did not reply. Instead, something scratched the stone behind him. He turned fast, blade ready, but saw nothing. Just empty black. I've seen many forms, the voice finally said. But they all rot. They all scream. They all beg to go back into the storm. But the storm does not want them. Only I do. Hunter's hand trembled. He gripped the knife tighter. His training meant nothing here. The creature spoke like it remembered every pain it caused. Like each one was a jewel, it polished often. The air thickened. His lungs worked harder for breath. Every step back he took felt like walking deeper into water. Something watched him, studied him, and it was in no rush. A dry hiss swept across the floor. The voice was closer now. You are not like the others. Your blood runs hotter. You came farther. You smell of battle. That makes you taste curious. He struck his lamp on. The flare of light revealed nothing but rock and shadow. No beast, no face, no claws, but the walls they shimmered with something wet. And deep within the rock were faces. Dozens, hundreds, carved or melded. He couldn't tell. Some were screaming, some weeping, some open-mouthed in silence. He backed away from the wall, heart pounding harder than before. That's impossible, he muttered. What are those? He pointed his lamp toward the carvings. But they seemed to move, just slightly. As if they breathed with the cave. They were like you, the voice said. Survivors. Explorers, warriors. But they left their marks here. Now they are part of the stone. Part of me, as you will be. Hunter bolted. His foot hit a rock and he crashed to the floor. The lamp flew from his hand and shattered. Darkness swallowed everything again. But this time, it came with a sound like something uncoiling. You run. That is good. They all ran. It adds flavor to the fear. It sweetens the end. Hunter scrambled blindly, fingers scraping the rock. He couldn't find the path he came from. The cave twisted now, unfamiliar and cruel. The air grew hotter. The smell copper and rot thicker. Somewhere behind him, the whisper came again. 500 years. Do you know how long that is? How long I've waited for the next heartbeat? The next voice? The next scream. He ran deeper, not by choice, but because the path only led that way. The walls seemed to close in. His mind screamed louder than his voice. He didn't know if he was still alone. Then he saw it. A soft glow, faint and flickering. Ahead. Hope or trap, he didn't care. He ran toward it with all the strength he had left, and behind him, the cave began to sing. The glowing light ahead flickered like a dying flame. Hunter pushed forward, ignoring the stabs of pain in his knees and palms. The darkness behind him breathed like it was alive, angry that he had escaped its first reach. He didn't dare stop. The stone walls pulsed faintly now, as if the cave itself had a heartbeat. Every sound was louder than it should be. His own breath sounded like thunder in his ears. Still, he kept crawling. The tunnel narrowed until he had to duck and squeeze. Through a jagged gap, his shoulders scraped raw against the stone. The light ahead grew stronger. It wasn't warm, but it was steady. His only hope lay with it. At last he emerged into a chamber. It was circular and wide, the roof lost in shadow. In the center stood a tall stone monolith covered in glowing symbols. Not written with paint or carved with tools. They pulsed from within the stone itself. He stepped closer. The air around the monolith felt cleaner. He could breathe. The fear in his chest didn't vanish, but it stopped growing. Whatever lived in the cave had not followed him here. The markings glowed brighter. As he neared, blue and silver light ran in lines like veins. Hunter reached out a hand and placed it gently on the surface. The stone was warm, almost soft. And then it spoke, not with words, not with sound, but with memory. Images flashed through his mind, worlds burning, warriors falling, screams buried beneath rock. And finally, a being of shadow, bound in chains. Beneath the mountain, Hunter gasped and stumbled back. He wiped sweat from his brow, though the chamber was not hot. The monolith had shown him the creature's prison. It had shown him what would happen if it fed again. The creature was not just old. It was cursed, trapped for a reason. Fed only when fools like him entered its tomb. The storm outside hadn't been nature's fury. It was a lure, a test, a trap to catch the unworthy. He paced the edge of the chamber, mind racing. The thing outside wasn't hunting. It was choosing, watching, waiting for the right kind of prey. Someone strong enough to last. Someone it could consume slowly. He turned back to the monolith. "Why show me?" he whispered. "Why help?" But the stone didn't respond. It only pulsed gently beneath its symbols. Its warmth was the only comfort he had. A sound echoed from the tunnel he had come through. A soft tap, then another. Then a drag like a body being pulled by claws. The creature was close again. It had given him a head start. Now it wanted sport. Hunter looked around for a weapon. There was nothing. Just rock, moss, and the monolith. But his gaze fell on a crack beneath the glowing stone. Something shimmered inside it. A handle. Buried deep, he dropped to his knees and dug with both hands. Sharp shards cut his skin, but he didn't stop. He wrapped his fingers around the handle and pulled. The object came free with a hiss. It was not a sword. It was something older, a rod of metal and light, engraved with runes that matched the monoliths. As he held it, the air shifted. The singing in the cave stopped. The dragging sound paused. And the voice returned. "So the seal speaks to you." It did not speak to the last, or the 100 before him. "You are different. That is why I will savor you longer." Hunter didn't answer. He held the rod tighter and stepped toward the tunnel. The fear hadn't vanished, but something stronger had taken its place. A quiet fury, a spark of defiance. The thing had chosen the wrong human. As the shadows thickened and the tunnel darkened, the rod in his hand hummed softly with power, and this time, the cave recoiled. The rod pulsed like a living thing in his grip. Faint vibrations ran along his arm. The metal was cold, but calming. It did not fear the creature in the cave. It had seen it before. Hunter stepped slowly into the tunnel. The glow from the rod lit only a few feet ahead. Shadows danced across the walls, but they didn't close in. They trembled. The beast could sense what he carried. "Come," the voice whispered again. It was slower now, less confident. "You carry the old key, but keys can break. You can still scream. Still feed the hunger." Hunter kept walking. The path twisted and narrowed. His shoulder brushed stone. The air thickened again, but the fear in him was now mixed with something sharper. He wasn't prey anymore. Around the next corner, the ground dipped. The walls widened into another chamber. It was darker than the last, with no monolith. Only silence and bones. Hundreds of bones piled high against the far wall. Skulls with faces frozen in pain. Arms reaching for a light that never came. Some were cracked. Some melted. The smell here was old, yet fresh. The beast fed slowly, but never forgot. Hunter didn't look away. He needed to see what came before. To know how many had tried. To understand what waited if he failed. The rod pulsed again, and a beam of light shot forward. The light revealed carvings on the wall, not random, not wild. These were warnings left behind, stories of sacrifice, of warriors turned to stone, of a prison fed by hope and fear. In the center of the carvings, a circle, empty, as if waiting for something. The rod in Hunter's hand pulsed harder. He stepped forward and raised it. The circle began to glow with a soft hum. The wall responded. Energy rippled through the cave. The floor shook. Dust fell from above. And from the far side of the chamber, the beast arrived. No longer just a voice. Now a form. It crawled forward on twisted limbs, its body shifting with every movement. No face, no eyes, just mouths. Rows of them, each one whispering, each one breathing slowly. Each one hungry. "You will break like the others," it said. "You think the rod saves you, but it only delays." They all thought they were special. They all screamed just the same. Hunter raised the rod. The light brightened. A symbol flared on the ground between them. A circle with jagged edges. The beast recoiled slightly. Its mouths twisted. Its limbs slowed. "You remember this," Hunter said. "The seal was made for you. It fed you. It bound you, but it can also end you," the beast hissed, not with fear. With rage, it lunged forward. The chamber shook. The walls cracked. Bones scattered across the floor. Hunter stood firm and drove the rod into the glowing circle. Light exploded from the ground. A wave of heat slammed outward. The creature screamed, but not with mouths. With every inch of its body, the sound wasn't just loud. It was ancient. The energy formed a barrier between them. The beast clawed at it, bit at it, but the rod held firm. The symbol glowed brighter. The walls began to pulse with the same light. "You cannot end me," the beast cried. "I am the storm. I am the hunger. I am forever." Hunter stepped closer to the edge of the seal. "Not forever," he said. "Only until someone fought back." The rod burned in his hand, but he didn't let go. Not when the light wrapped around the beast. Not when the mouths closed one by one. Not when the whispers turned to silence. The creature was pulled inward, downward, into the glowing seal. Its body twisted, shrank, then vanished. Only the silence remained. And the bones no longer wept. Hunter fell to his knees, gasping for air. The rod dimmed but stayed whole. The chamber was quiet again. But this time, it was peace. And outside, the storm had stopped. Hunter sat on the cold floor, chest rising and falling slowly. The silence was real now, not the kind before danger. It was the stillness after something old had ended. Something that should never have been awakened. He looked at the rod. Its glow had faded to a dim ember. It no longer pulsed with power, but it still felt alive in his hand. The weight of what he had done settled over him like dust. He forced himself to stand. His body ached. His knees shook. But his steps were steady. The cave had changed. The air no longer bit into his lungs. The pressure that had gripped his chest was gone. The path back through the tunnel was no longer dark. The moss on the walls now gave off a faint light. As he walked, the stone under his boots felt less hostile. Like the cave was breathing easier. He passed the bone chamber again. The seal on the ground was still glowing, but faintly. The bones no longer screamed in his mind. They lay quiet, honored. The beast had not fed on them in vain, Hunter whispered. A promise as he passed. He didn't know who those people were. But he had ended what they could not. Their faces would never twist again. The cave would not claim another soul. When he reached the monolith chamber, he stopped. The markings had changed. The glowing veins now pulsed in a different rhythm. A soft blue light, calm and steady. Like a heartbeat at rest. He placed the rod back into the crack where he had found it. The stone accepted it without resistance. A new symbol lit up above the opening, not warning, not fear. A mark of balance. Hunter stepped back. He bowed his head slightly, unsure why. Maybe out of respect. Or maybe because the cave no longer felt like a tomb. It felt like a graveyard that had been finally blessed. As he turned to leave, the walls around him shimmered briefly. The moss brightened. The stone cracked open along the far edge of the chamber. A new passage revealed itself, carved smooth and wide. He stepped inside. The tunnel sloped gently upward. The light grew stronger with each step. The scent of rain met his nose. Not the sour, metallic stink from before. This was fresh, real, alive. After a short climb, he emerged onto the surface. The sky above him was clear. Stars stretched across the black canvas. No wind, no storm. Just the soft hum of the world turning. He breathed deep. The first real breath in hours, maybe days. He didn't know how long he had been in the cave. But the world had changed. Or maybe he had. His cum crackled on his hip. A burst of static, then a voice. Bass to echo 4. Hunter, do you copy? He grabbed the device and pressed the button quickly. This is Hunter, he said. I'm alive. I need evac. And I have a report. A big one. The voice responded, confused but relieved. Coordinates locked. We're sending a team. Hang tight. What happened out there? He looked back toward the cave. He thought about explaining about the monster, the seal, the rod. The voices in the dark, but none of it would make sense in a single message. Not yet, not to them. Tell Command the storm was a cover, he said, and that the mountain isn't empty. There's something under it. Or there was. He sat on a rock near the opening. The wind touched his skin gently. It no longer whispered threats. It carried peace now. But deep inside, he knew it wasn't over yet. Some prisons don't hold forever. Some evils sleep lightly. And some keys never vanish completely. Hunter stared at the stars. He had survived the cave. But the memory of the voice still lived in the back of his mind. And somewhere far below, something still listened. Hunter waited on the rock, watching the sky. Minutes passed like hours. The stars above did not move, but the silence around him carried weight. His body ached, but his mind was sharper than ever. The wind brushed gently against his skin. He listened to the quiet sounds of the world. No growls, no voices. Just the rustle of dry grass and the distant crackle of static from his cum. A light broke through the trees. Then another. Search beams. His rescue had arrived. He stood and waved his arms, guiding them in. A transport vessel hovered above and began to descend. The ship's landing gear hissed as it touched down. The side door opened with a metallic thud. 3 soldiers in full gear rushed out, their helmets turned toward him. One stepped forward and raised a scanner. Vitals low, light dehydration. Minor injuries, the medic said. Sir, we're here to take you back. Are you stable? Hunter nodded. He followed them onto the ramp without a word. Inside the vessel, warmth returned to his body. A soldier handed him water. Another strapped him in. As the ship lifted off, he looked out. The window at the cave below. It was quiet. Too quiet. You found the source of the storm? The captain asked from across the cabin. Hunter met his eyes but didn't answer right away. The memory of the mouths. The whispers. The seal. It still clung to him. It wasn't just weather, Hunter said. Something in that cave was calling the storm, drawing people in and feeding off them. I stopped it, but I don't think it's over. The captain raised an eyebrow. Feeding? Are you saying it was alive? Hunter nodded slowly. More than alive, it remembered. It chose, it waited. I don't know if it's gone, but I know it feared something I found. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a shard of the rod. The light had vanished, but the metal still hummed faintly. The soldiers stared at it. None spoke. The air in the cabin shifted slightly. We need to seal that cave, Hunter said. Burn it, collapse it. Bury it so deep no one finds it again. Because if it wakes again, no one will survive unless they carry the seal. Back at the base, Hunter gave his full report. Scientists listened. Commanders frowned. No one interrupted. The tale was impossible, but his words carried the weight of truth. They sent drones to survey the cave. Images showed the chambers, the carvings, the bones. But the monolith had gone. Dark, the seal was still faintly glowing. The cave did not welcome them. The mountain was declared a red zone. A perimeter was set. Satellites placed overhead. No one was allowed near. The official records called it unstable terrain. But those who had heard Hunter's story knew better. In the weeks that followed, Hunter slept little. The voice returned in dreams, not every night, but often enough to remind him that it still remembered his name. that it still whispered from somewhere deep. He kept the rod shard beside his bed. One night, it glowed faintly again. Only for a moment. But it was enough to make him rise and stare into the dark corner of his room. Then the storm returned, far from the mountain. On another world, a colony gone silent. The same weather pattern, the same strange energy pulses, a new cave. A new set of whispers. Command summoned him again. No one else had survived something like this. They needed answers. They needed a weapon. They needed him. Hunter didn't hesitate. He took the shard. He packed his gear. And he faced the dark once more. Some storms never stop. Some creatures never truly sleep. And some men are forever changed by what they survived. Hunter looked at the stars as his ship launched into orbit. He knew the voice would be waiting. The ship cut through the atmosphere of the distant colony world. Red clouds swirled below like boiling blood. Lightning danced across the sky, silent from this high up. But Hunter could already feel the storm's hunger. He sat near the rear of the cabin, the shard resting in his hand. It no longer glowed. It had not since he left Earth. Still, it pulsed softly against his palm like a sleeping heart. The other soldiers aboard said nothing. They had read the mission file. They had seen the data. But they didn't understand the voice. They hadn't heard it breathing through stone and whispering behind walls. The colony had gone dark 3 days ago. No signal, no signs of attack. Only a sudden shift in climate, rain without clouds, wind without direction. The last message had been a scream. As the ship descended, the terrain came into view. Twisted trees bent in unnatural angles. Buildings torn apart from the inside. Roads cracked and flooded without rain. The storm here had not passed. They landed just outside the colony perimeter. Hunter stepped out first. The wind greeted him instantly, not with force, but with familiarity. It curled around him like fingers. It remembered him. He gritted his teeth and walked forward. The others followed, checking their scanners and weapons. Every step deeper into the colony made the air heavier. Like gravity itself didn't want them here. They found the main square destroyed. Statues shattered, lights broken. The central tower had collapsed in a spiral, as if pulled downward by something from beneath. That was where it always began. Hunter pointed toward the rubble. "There's a cave below that," he said. "There always is. That's where we go." They cleared the debris slowly. Stone and metal groaned as it shifted. Beneath it, just as Hunter feared, a narrow tunnel stretched into the earth. No lights, no sound. Only a cold breath rising from below. The soldiers hesitated. Hunter didn't. He lit a small torch and entered. The shard in his hand remained still. The tunnel sloped downward in a spiral, just like the last one. Every wall pulsed faintly with moisture. 100 steps in, they found the first sign. A carving on the wall, not made by tools. Etched by claw. The same symbols from the mountain cave. The same language of the sealed. Same creature? One of the soldiers asked. Hunter nodded. Or same kind. Doesn't matter. If it's awake, it'll feed soon. And this colony will only be the beginning. Deeper. In the tunnel opened into a vast chamber. Not like the others, this one had no monolith, no seal. Only a pit, deep, endless. From it came the whispers. Dozens of them. Layered and constant. "You returned," said a voice from below. Not the same as before. This one was younger, sharper, but still hungry. "You wear the scent of the old seal. You ended one of us." But not all. Hunter stepped to the edge and raised the shard. A weak glow flickered and died. The power here was stronger. The shard alone wouldn't hold it. Not this time. Not without the seal. The soldiers aimed their weapons. "What's the call?" one asked. Hunter stared into the pit. He could not see the creature, only feel it, moving beneath the surface. Twisting, waiting, "We seal it. not with tech, with stone. We bury this place. If we don't, the voice will spread. The storm will move to the next world, and we'll chase it forever. Explosives were placed at the walls. The soldiers moved fast. The whispers grew louder. The wind in the tunnel turned warm and wet. Something was coming up. Hunter remained near the edge. He whispered something into the darkness. A warning. A promise. A reminder that humans didn't run forever. Then he backed away. As the charges blew, the walls cracked, the ceiling fell. The pit screamed, not in pain, but in rage. The voice did not die, but it was muffled. For now, the team ran back up the tunnel. Dust choked the air. Rocks fell behind them. The mouth of the cave collapsed just as they reached the surface. And behind them, the world went quiet. The cave behind them had collapsed, but no one spoke. Dust floated in the air like ash. The trees were still bent, the ground still damp, but something had shifted. The whispers were gone. Hunter sat on a rock just beyond the blast zone. His hands were dirty, knuckles raw, but he didn't feel pain. The silence wasn't empty this time. It was earned. The soldiers checked equipment and scanned the land. Number. Heat signatures beneath the soil. No sound frequencies matching the creature. The pit was sealed, the voice buried. But Hunter knew better. It wasn't dead. Not yet. It was only trapped again. And like the one before it, this one would wait. Wait for cracks. Wait for storms. Wait for a new voice to answer. The team returned to the colony center. Communications were down. The satellite feeds fried. Whatever the creature had done had stretched into orbit. It wanted to be hidden. They set up temporary towers and signaled for extraction. The sky above was still thick with red clouds. Lightning cracked, but no thunder followed. The energy here had not fully settled. Hunter walked alone to the far edge of the ruins. A small statue had fallen in the grass. A child holding a star. It reminded him of what these people had built and what they had lost. He picked up the statue and placed it upright. Dirt covered its face. He wiped it away gently, like touching something sacred. The shard in his pocket pulsed once, then faded again. In the command tent, they recorded his statement. He spoke clearly. He left nothing out. Not the pit. Not the voice. Not the warning. And not the seal that still lived within him. The officers asked if more existed. He nodded once. They're not one being, he said. They're a species or a disease. A hunger that hides in stone and waits for storms. They asked how to find them. He had no answer. They didn't live by rules. They didn't build, they waited. Buried in caves or mountains or ruins. Places where humans don't belong. One general leaned forward. And how do we kill them? Hunter looked down at his hands. The answer was simple but hard to accept. We don't, he said. We only bury them again and again. Weeks later, Hunter stood at the top of Earth's northern cliffs. A wind swept across the ocean below. He wasn't alone. A group of new recruits stood behind him, quiet, focused, listening. They had read the reports, studied the caves, learned the symbols. They carried sensors and seal tools and signal breakers. They were not soldiers. They were watchers. Hunter turned and faced them. You won't hear medals for this, he said. You'll hear voices. You'll see things others deny. And you'll bury threats before they rise. That's your war now, the recruits nodded. They didn't flinch, they understood the cost. Each of them had seen what happened when the caves were ignored. They knew the silence before the storm. Hunter walked past them, toward the helipad. His gear was packed. Another report had come in. A distant moon, unstable terrain. Miners missing. The pattern had returned. As the craft rose into the sky, he looked down at Earth one last time. Peace was never permanent. But humans had changed. They no longer walked blindly into the dark. Now they listened. Now they watched. Now they knew that when a voice whispers from a cave, it's not just stone speaking. It's something ancient, something hungry, something that remembers, and as long as someone hears it, it will never be alone. But now neither is humanity.